You won't believe just what we're going to talk about in this video as we discuss some of the most popular areas here in Jacksonville, Florida. In this video, we're going to dive into the San Marco and the Riverside Avondale neighborhood/areas here in Jacksonville and go over why they are such a popular attraction between their walkability, all the events they have going on, and the historic aspects of them. So without wasting any time, let's get right on into it. San Marco and Riverside and Avondale, those areas here in Jacksonville, they hold a deep connection to Jacksonville because of the fact that those are some of the oldest areas, historically speaking, here in Jacksonville. And so ultimately, these areas have become super popular over the years and have stayed popular because of that historic element, along with the fact that there's a lot of great walkability in the area to go with it. But before we go too much deeper into it, don't forget, if you have any questions as we're going through this video, you can call me, you can text me, you can email me. It'll be on the screen with any questions you may have as far as San Marco, Riverside, Avondale, what kind of new construction could be over there, as well as just any other details you may want to know about when it comes to living in, here in Jacksonville, Florida. And also don't forget you can like and subscribe to this video. It definitely helps keep me able to post content just like this in the future. But overall, starting off with San Marco. San Marco is classified as being the South Bank here in Jacksonville. Now, the South Bank of Jacksonville is going to be south of the St. Johns River, and the North Bank is going to be more of your downtown Jacksonville, and there's a lot of development going on in the North Bank, but that's not to say there's not development going on right now in the South Bank. If you're watching this video, it's because you want to know more about these areas and potentially even to move to these areas. And one thing I can tell you is San Marco has new construction right now. We don't get a lot of it, but in this situation, we do have River's Edge. River's Edge is a community that's being built by Toll Brothers, which is a national home builder. We work with them quite a bit, and Toll Brothers is building luxury townhouses here, right along the South Bank, with some of them even going to be facing, the St. Johns River. So these townhouses are going to start, at a, $600,000 to $700,000 price point. But it does give you one of those few options that you don't get a lot of times in the area, which is new construction. But in addition here with San Marco, it's characterized by having a lot of different restaurants, a lot of different shops that you can walk to on a day-to-day or daily basis, really close to, where you could be living. And again, when it comes to these restaurants, you actually have, up in the South Bank, you have Ruth Chris Steakhouse, which does actually face, has nice, beautiful views of the St. Johns River. But you also do have, with this area too, you have the Jacksonville MOSH, which is the Museum of Science and History. For now, it's one of those things that there is a potential of it moving, that's kind of the plan, but for now it's still located down in San Marco. And the MOSH is a great time if you have young kids to be able to take them. It is a museum, but it also does have a bit of a fun element to it that you don't always see with all museums. And it's very hands-on for kids. So it's one of those things you don't have to be worried about them breaking anything per se at a museum like the MOSH. And again, they sometimes do different events down there too. I've been to a concert down there at the MOSH in the past myself. So again, kind of some cool elements down there. In addition to the MOSH, right behind it, we have Friendship Fountain. Now, Friendship Fountain is really cool in the sense of, is that, it gives you some amazing views of the Jacksonville skyline here, as you can see in the background. And Friendship Fountain is an area, again, that, people like to go to take pictures, to be able to see the sunsets, and do many different things as well, especially when they're down at the MOSH. I can remember when I was a kid, Friendship Fountain, I don't know if they still do this, but, they actually used to have Easter egg hunts down there on Easter at the fountain. And that was always kind of a cool aspect for me as a kid to go to be able to hang out with other kids. And again, see who can find the most Easter eggs per se and get the most candy. I'm sure my parents probably didn't necessarily love, when I've had some cavities, but, you only live once, right? But overall, the South Bank and Friendship Fountain, it like as you can see here, just some great views of the downtown area. We actually do now have a beautiful park on the North Bank that just got finished, so you can see that from Friendship Fountain, South Bank. So overall, it is just another cool element that you can either drive to or walk to, whether if you live in San Marco or if you live in other parts of Jacksonville. But overall, with San Marco, we do have the San Marco Square. That is going to be right here off of San Marco Boulevard. And we do have another thoroughfare to get there for San Jose Boulevard or US or State Road 13. And again, we're going to have a lot of different restaurants, a lot of different shops, a lot of different bars in the San Marco area with a lot of great walkability. So just to give you a couple ideas, this comes straight from visitjacksonville.com. So if you want to see more about Jacksonville as a whole, visitjacksonville.com does have a lot of good information for Jacksonville that either we can always discuss ourselves, or if you like to do your own research, you can always go there here as well. But as you can see, there's just a lot of uniqueness to San Marco. And you'll see this a lot to Riverside and Avondale as well. But what makes it so unique with San Marco is you do get some amazing sunsets there, being the fact that you do, have that water to the west to, allow you to have those amazing sunsets. Whereas most of Jacksonville, especially if you're out at the beaches, it's all about those sunrises. Well, I don't know about you, but, I like to think I'm a morning person, but, sometimes I'm not always great being a morning person. So seeing a sunset's always a lot easier for me than seeing a sunrise, especially on a day-to-day basis. But over in San Marco, you do have that ability to see it. A lot of, mom and pop kind of restaurants, a lot of smaller restaurants and shops and stuff like that. A lot of different events that they do down there. This was a beer fest event that they did back in February. Biddy and Bo's Coffee. So definitely a lot of different things that you can just walk to that you don't see in other parts of Jacksonville. Because again, Jacksonville tends to be categorized as more of a driving city. Whereas with these areas that we're focusing on in today's video, these are areas in Jacksonville where you can get away with not having to drive nearly as much to get to most things. Because again, you can walk or you can bike to these things. But again, as we continue to kind of look through the area, you do have your public supermarket down here, which was completely revamped. And so with the public supermarket, they actually have a parking garage there as well. You do have Gemma Fish and Seafood, I believe. You have Foxtail Coffee. And you do have some other new construction in the area with different apartment complexes as well. So again, just everything's super walkable. Everything gives you that more historic feel that you don't get in some of the newer areas here in Jacksonville. If you've been here, I'm talking about it. But if you haven't been here, a lot of our newer areas of Jacksonville, especially when you were talking about, St. Johns County or even parts of Clay County, is it feels very cookie cutter. It feels very one size fits all. You don't have any sort of, or not any, but you have less differences in architecture that in San Marco you see a lot of. So with San Marco, a lot of it, they focused on keeping that historic element, not tearing down these buildings, these houses, and allowing people to have that uniqueness that you don't see everywhere. Now, with this uniqueness does come some hurdles. When you're living in San Marco, if you have a house here, you are going to potentially have a higher insurance because the house is older. A lot of the items around it's older. But you also have to expect to have, a good bit more of, repair cost for these homes, because with these older homes, to repair them is not always going to be cheap, because of the fact of how they were built back then is not how they're built nowadays. So sometimes bringing things up to codes can increase cost for an area like San Marco that you don't always see in other areas as well. But with San Marco as well, if we want to go down some more streets, you'll notice here that unlike other parts of Jacksonville, San Marco is one of the few areas that you can find duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, and again, still be within walking distance of all your favorite restaurants and shops. So that's a cool aspect too that you don't see everywhere else, is you do have that ability to get that here, because duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, they're not really built much anymore, by builders, because there's less profit in it for them in some regards. But do keep in mind, yes, you can get those things here, but they will definitely be at a much premium cost. So again, if you want to know more about, what the true cost is to live in an area like San Marco, you definitely just need to reach out to me with a call, a text, an email. I'm always happy to help, put you on the right track as far as giving you a good understanding of, what all you have to think about when living in an area like this. But like I mentioned, I mean, just everything has just great walkability. Even driving, within the area is not too bad either. I mean, you have condos, you have homes, along the South Bank, so you do get those amazing sunsets. I mean, just really cool across the board, and something that we don't see, like I said, in other parts of Jacksonville. So overall, San Marco does give you a lot of that. As you can see, I mean, very historic. It actually used to be its own city way back in the day before it merged with Jacksonville. And it really does provide you something different if you're not someone who wants that new construction. Now, another area that's going to kind of give you that as well is going to actually be the Riverside Avondale area, which, believe it or not, is right across the river over here. So let's go ahead and now talk about the Riverside Avondale area as well. So as we move over to the Riverside Avondale area, that's going to take us across the river over to the west side of the river. And Riverside Avondale, you have your 5 Points area up here, which is going to be a part of Riverside. But the Riverside Avondale area, really what it spans, if we really want to kind of take a look at it here. But before I do all that, let me just go and zoom out. So obviously, we have our Jacksonville, the 295 outer loop kind of gives you pretty much the majority of Jacksonville within it. There are areas outside of it as well. But as we zoom in here, we have our Riverside and Avondale sections, areas, neighborhoods, but depending on what you want to call it. And these areas really do. We also have Murray Hill out there, which we'll discuss in a future video. But the Riverside Avondale sections here, it's really split pretty much right down the middle, as far as, where each one starts and ends. And a lot of times people reference them as, one and the same. If you live in Riverside, if you live in Avondale, you live in the Riverside Avondale area or neighborhood. And again, just like San Marco, this is going to be a neighborhood or an area that you can, walk to a lot of different restaurants and shops, depending on where you live. You can bike to a lot of different things, and it has that historic element, just like San Marco did. Now, Riverside Avondale does have slightly better price points, so that is one of those things that, depending on where in Riverside you want to be at, you do have maybe a slight, easier ability, at a lower price point to be in those areas than say like a San Marco, where the price points have kind of gone up a little bit further. But overall, they do still have their own perks as well. So as we go deeper into it, with the with the Riverside Avondale areas, as I mentioned before, we have our 5 Points section up here. 5 Points is obviously being described as 5 Points because there are 5 points here for this intersection, and that really does kind of give you that starting point when we start talking about Riverside. Now, Riverside, you do have multiple parks. You have Riverside Park over here. You also have Memorial Park. So that is really places where people really, come to on a weekend or day-to-day basis and just hang out. Whether if it's, just walking their dog down there, if it's meeting with friends, if it's, having lunch, people really do kind of gravitate towards there on a day-to-day basis. And again, with San Marco, or with Riverside Avenue, just like San Marco, as we come here on Park Street, you'll see, I mean, we have obviously, the Riverside Park back here, but I mean, these restaurants, these shops, I mean, it's just very walkable if you live nearby, or again, bikeable. I mean, just tons of different options here. Edge City, Bark on Park, Hawthorne Salon, Cuisine 76 and Bar, Rodrigo's Craft Beer, 8th Day Tattoo. I mean, just a mixture of everything here. We also have over here, we have what used to be a movie theater. I mean, just tons of different things to do down here. This is Hop Tingers. It is a restaurant, but also a bar. I mean, so again, just everything's just so quaint and so easy to get to down here. Here's our 5 Points intersection right here. That really does make it very popular for people to live in, especially you do tend to see, younger demographics really gravitate towards this area for its walkability. Especially if they've come from cities that don't tend to do a lot of driving, this is an area where you do see people start to kind of, gravitate towards for that same reason. So we also have the Cumber Museum down here. Now the Cumber Museum, again, a very cool place as well. I mean, just some amazing views. I mean, people get married here. People, get engaged here. I mean, just really kind of gives you some cool elements to it. And they have days where you can get in for free. They have days where they have reduced pricing. But again, this is gonna be more arts and garden. And again, I mean, just some really cool views that you don't see in most of Jacksonville, but you do get to see here. So if you're a history junkie, if you're an art, junkie in a sense, like if you just really like that kind of stuff, I mean, this is a place that even if you don't move to Jacksonville, even if you don't live in these areas, you still need to come visit and just see what it has to offer, because it really is a very cool establishment. And what they do is they do an amazing job over there as well. And then obviously Memorial Park down here, I mean, just to kind of show you some more of what it has to offer. I mean, just, really cool. Sometimes if you're not from here and you maybe have seen some pictures during some of our, I wouldn't say major storms, some of the more major storms we've had here, sometimes we get really high tides in this Riverside Avondale area. And the water can kind of, come over the side from the river. Now, again, that's another thing to consider when living in these areas is you might be more prone to potential flooding or just elevated waters. So if you want to know more about that, you got to call me, text me, email me. But there are some cool images out there of, the water kind of coming up and over with, in the background with, the fountain they have down there. So just kind of cool across the board. Not cool during a storm, but cool across the board. So anyways, Memorial Park is a nice little quaint area to be in as well. So again, you have all these restaurants, all these shops down here, but guess what? Right down the way, I mean, you go not even a block over and we have, homes right down the way to be able to live in. Some of these homes do get changed into more commercial establishments. Obviously, just like San Marco, you will see duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes. But what you will see here, different than San Marco, is a lot of these homes start to move towards more wood frame despite being the same age than what we saw in San Marco. So we do kind of see a transition there, although there are still block and brick houses down here as well. So again, just really cool across the board. And this will take us down to Avondale. Now, as we go down to Avondale, Avondale is just, a little bit ways down the way. In Avondale, you're gonna have, right here off King Street, you're gonna have a lot of your restaurants and shops. And this is really where people do tend to spend a lot of their time. Avondale has quite a few bars as well. So between Riverside and Avondale, you get quite a bit of that. And again, just very similar in the sense of everything, there's some more historic elements to it. You don't get that cookie cutterness that you get in other parts of Jacksonville. And even the beaches, here in Jack's Beach, it has gone to more modern, aesthetic. And so that's where a lot of people who don't want that modern aesthetic, on a day-to-day basis, they may still go down to the beach on nice days, but this is where they choose to live because of the fact that, it has a little more charm, a little more character than what you see in other parts of Jacksonville. So you have Keg and Coin down here as well. So just really a lot of different options. Right here we have Kickbacks. Kickbacks is a pretty popular bar and restaurant, I would say, just really different across the board. Inside, they have tons of different beer options, tons of different kinds of food. They're a gastro pub, so, definitely more of your savories across the board. But overall, just like with Riverside, Avondale also has a lot of those similar style homes. So again, when we're looking through it, you'll see here, I mean, we do have some brick homes, some block homes. We have some homes that, are gonna be wood frame. So again, it just kind of depends. It comes down to what you're looking for in a home. But I will say too with Avondale, Avondale is gonna be characterized by having smaller homes. Typically those larger homes you see are gonna be more in Riverside. But it's not to say that we don't have bigger homes in Avondale, just normally Avondale is gonna be, more geared towards those smaller homes when you're comparing the two. So overall, Riverside and Avondale, you do have quite a lot of attraction here. Avondale does span further south as well. One thing is that as you go further south, you do get to more of that Ortega area, which we'll go over in another video. But that Riverside Avondale area, to say which one's more popular between that area and neighborhood versus San Marco, it really comes down to personal preference. But what I will tell you is people do like both. And a lot of times, it really comes down to where you work, where your family or friends live, and also, how much you're wanting to spend on a home that's going to dictate which side, Riverside Avondale or San Marco, you end up choosing. So overall, just really great areas across the board, especially if you're looking for more of that historic element to them. So that gives you an idea of what San Marco as well as Riverside and Avondale have to offer. Again, the big things to characterize it by is it's gonna be a more historic area of Jacksonville. The homes are gonna be older, but they're gonna have that charm that you don't see in other parts of Jacksonville. And everything is very walkable down there. There are other parts of Jacksonville where you're constantly having to drive to anything and everything. So if you want to know more about these areas or other areas I didn't touch on in this video, reach out to me with a call, a text, an email. I would gladly be ready to answer any questions you may have to give you a better understanding of just why I love Jacksonville. Jacksonville is not for everybody, just like any city is not for everybody, but Jacksonville does hold a special place for certain people. And there's people I constantly talk to that never even knew Jacksonville existed until they went on YouTube just like this and started to do some research and found videos like mine to get a better feel for the area. But again, if you ever need any help with any real estate services, I'm always here to help answer any and all questions and help you through the process and get you the right game plan in place to ensure that if you want to live in San Marco or Riverside and Avondale, we do everything we can to make it happen. All right, I'll see you guys again in our next video.